All right, interns. So in this module, we will be talking about weekly logs and the evaluation process. So if you would look at page 33 in your student handbook, this is where you'll find some of the rules regarding the weekly logs. So for these logs, they need to be completed and posted or uploaded as a Word document into ReggieNet by 8 a.m. on the Tuesday following that rotation week. So, for example, if I was rotating August 19th through the 23rd, that log would be due by 8 a.m. on August 27th. So it gives you a couple of days to finish filling out your log and getting those submitted onto ReggieNet. For the ease of looking at 15 different students' logs, we ask that you save these weekly logs in this fashion. So you want to put your initials first. So in this example, Julie Schumacher. The rotation she's in is community. And then this is her first week of rotations. So it's saved as JSCO1 and so on and so on. In order to assist in the peer evaluation process and the ability for you to give and receive constructive feedback, you're going to respond to another classmate's logs 2 times throughout the semester, once at the midpoint and once near the end, and then we'll do the same thing in the spring. The peers logs that you will be reviewing will be assigned to you, and I'll show you in another module where to find that in ReggieNet. But we will use Flipgrid, which is a video tool, to record these responses. So just an example, at that midpoint, if I was assigned to review Julie's logs, I would go back and look at all the logs that she's had from the first half of the fall semester, and then I would formulate about a 5-minute video just giving my response to Julie and giving her some suggestions for maybe things she could do differently, things she might look to do in her next rotation, and so on. You will be provided additional guidelines and recommendations for these videos when that time gets closer, but just know that 2 times throughout the semester, you will be expected to record a video to respond to your peers' logs. On page 34, there is a log rubric, so just a couple of things that I want to point out. Again, this is a performance assessment that determines to what extent you have accomplished those competencies. And by keeping these weekly logs, it helps you identify your strengths and weaknesses throughout the rotation, so you're not just blindsided at evaluation time if you have really lacked in one competency area. So in order to exceed expectations, which is where we want you to be, all logs are posted by 8 a.m. on Tuesday of the following week. They state your activities, experiences, and any challenges that you've encountered, and they focus on reflecting on the challenges and how they are going to be overcome. When it comes to your reflection, it is evident that you have reviewed your peers' logs and you provide a very meaningful response with appropriate suggestions. So if you do a little bit less than meeting those expectations, you will just meet expectations. If you do a little bit less than that, you do not meet expectations. So I would encourage you to review this rubric to know exactly what you need to do to exceed expectations on your weekly logs. Moving on, so I thought that the best way to show you how to do these logs would be just to show you an example of a previous intern. So just to highlight a couple things here at the top, again, this document will be available to you in ReggieNet so that you have this template and can complete your weekly logs every week. At the top, you'll include your name, cell phone number, and the office number of the site you are rotating at. And then off to the right-hand side over here is how you can help track your hours. So you will include what week's work schedule you're in. So are you in week 1, week 2, week 3? How many hours did you obtain that week? What are the total hours for that specific rotation? And then what are the total hours for that rotation set? So that would be for all of food service, all of clinical, all of community. So just a reminder, for food service and community, you should have 320 hours at the end. And for clinical, you should have 480 hours at the end. So here is an example of a previous intern's weekly log. So what you are expected to do in this column where it says learning activity and educational approach, this is where you're going to document those different planned experiences that we went through. You had that big bulleted list or the examples in that center column of the curriculum. So what activity did you do? What date did you execute that activity? And then what competency does that activity relate to? And then provide the description. So in this student's weekly log, she participated in a mock health inspection conducted by the supervisors in the kitchen, and she reviewed meal guidelines for the Meals on Wheels program. So she related those experiences back to CRDNs 2.1 and 4.2. This is going to be extremely helpful when you're going through and looking at, okay, I need to accomplish all of these competencies in food service, and it's almost like a check mark, like, okay, now I've done 2.1, now I've done 4.2 to an acceptable level, I can move on. In addition to relating those planned experiences back to the competencies, in this far column here, we want you to discuss the knowledge and skills that you've enhanced or learned by doing that learning activity, and then also discuss any challenges that you encountered and how you worked to resolve them. So another example here, this intern attended supervisor meetings and served in the tray line, and delivered patient trays. So she related that activity to CRDN 2.4, functioning as a member of the interprofessional team. Here are the days that she did that, and then she did a little bit of reflection on what she learned or what skills she enhanced, and then what challenges she encountered and how she worked through them. So what I would encourage you to do is every day at the end of your rotation, go ahead and open your document for that week, fill in the learning activities, because trust me, by the end of the week, on Friday, you will not remember what you worked on that Monday. So if you go in and do this work a little bit every day after rotations, document all those learning activities, all you have to do at the end of the week is relate those back to a competency, and then document the knowledge or skills that you enhanced, and document your challenges. You're not always going to have challenges related to your learning activities, but we want you to reflect on how things could have gone a little bit better. You'll have many different competencies, many different learning activities, as you saw in that intern example. But at the end of the week, we also want you, if you need to, type out what kind of assistance you need, either from the preceptor or from Dr. Schumacher or myself, to help you become more proficient in the competencies related to that rotation. So if it's something that you need from the preceptor, indicate with a bolded P. And if it's something you need from the internship directors, you'll put a DI. I will be reading your logs every week, and so if something has come up and you need assistance, of course you can always email me, but I'll also be paying attention to this optional section here at the bottom. Once you have completed your log for that week and you have uploaded it into ReggieNet, it is also important that you share your logs with your preceptors. That way they can keep track of the activities that you've been doing, kind of keep tabs on how your rotation is going, but they can also pay attention to that area at the bottom where if there's something you need from them, it can help facilitate that conversation to make sure that you have the best experience possible at that rotation site. So discuss with your preceptor, maybe on that first day of rotations, how they would like you to share these logs with them, whether it be via email or if they would prefer that you print a hard copy and give it to them when it is complete. So again, these will be uploaded into ReggieNet by Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. following that week of rotations. And I would also encourage you to keep a separate flash drive with all of your logs in there. We will talk about organizing your materials a little bit later. So we're going to jump back up then to page 32 so that we can talk a little bit more about evaluations. So for evaluations, there's going to be a midterm evaluation for only those rotations that last longer than 4 weeks. If you are only at a site for 3 weeks or 2 weeks in the case of long-term care, you do not need to complete a midterm evaluation. It's simply too short. It wouldn't make much sense. But just to reemphasize, if the rotation is 4 weeks or longer, you will be doing both a midterm and a final evaluation. The program directors, either Dr. Schumacher or myself, will make every effort to participate in any final evaluations that you have going on. We won't be involved in the midterm evaluation. That's just something that you and your preceptor can discuss. Unless you want us to participate or the preceptor wants us to participate, we certainly would be able to do that. So for midterm evaluations, again, this is only for rotations lasting 4 weeks or longer, but for those midterms, you will want to, at the beginning of the rotation, sit down with your preceptor and determine a date and time that he or she can sit down with you and discuss the results of your midterm evaluation. Again, the program directors are not involved in the midterm evaluation unless desired by the student or the preceptor. These forms, however, will be uploaded into ReggieNet under the Assignments tab so that we can review them, and if something does come up and we have questions, we can always ask. You, as the intern, are responsible for completing the experiences section on the evaluation form and sending that to your preceptor. At that point, all your preceptor has to do is review the experiences that you've provided and determine to what extent you have met the quartiles, which we will talk about here in a second. After you have filled out that experiences portion, saved it, sent it to your preceptor, at the midterm only, you will also complete a self-evaluation. So you will evaluate based on your experiences where you think you've achieved the quartiles and if you've been meeting expectations. 2 days before that time of your midpoint evaluation, you will want to provide both the experiences only version of your midterm evaluation and your self-evaluation to your preceptor so that they can see where you think you're at, and then they also have that form to fill out where they think you're at. After you've then had that time to sit down with your preceptor and discuss the results of your midterm evaluation, they should be able to email that completed form back to you so that you can upload both the self-evaluation and your preceptor's final midterm evaluation back to you so that you can upload both of those documents into ReggieNet. In terms of the final evaluation, at the beginning of the rotation, again, we encourage you to set that date right away at the beginning so that you know when the evaluation is going to be, but also, especially important for the final evaluation, you want to make sure that you share that date and time with me so that I can arrange for the final evaluation conference call. And in the case of the clinical rotations, we also want to try to plan for us to video conference into your major case study presentation. So very similar to the midterm, you are going to complete the experiences portion of the evaluation and email that to your preceptor 2 days before that scheduled final evaluation to allow them time to complete the quartile rankings. The difference between the midterm and the final is that at this final evaluation time, you do not need to complete a self-evaluation. Self-evaluations are only completed at the midterm. So for the final, you do those experiences, you send that to your preceptor. We encourage you and the preceptor to look that over before the final conference call to make sure that there's nothing that the two of you disagree on, or there's not an experience that maybe you need to explain in further detail so that they can rank you accordingly. And then once that form is complete, the preceptor should email that both to the student so that you can upload it into ReggieNet later, but you should also have them email that to me so that I can review that document before sitting down to have that video conference call with you and the preceptor at that designated time. So just a note, all of the evaluation forms are available on ReggieNet. It is your responsibility for the preceptors to get that electronic copy of the evaluation form with your experiences filled in so that they can provide the quartiles. I would also encourage you to provide them with the quartile list. They received a copy in their version of the student handbook, but just sending that to them again is going to help assist them in their rankings. And so what I'm talking about when I say the quartile explanations is right here. And again, this is in the resources folder in our ReggieNet site. So if you have achieved the first quartile, that means you've simply watched the preceptor doing a task. If you've achieved the second quartile, you've not only watched, but you've also been able to give your input and your feedback on that activity. To achieve the third quartile, which anything above the second, so third and fourth, is what you need to pass those bolded competencies that we talked about. So for the third quartile, you want to be doing the tasks with the preceptor and getting ready to do them on your own. So it may be that you and the preceptor are both sitting at the table providing counseling to a client together. And then to achieve the fourth quartile, you want to be doing the project independently without the preceptor. So the preceptor may still be there, but you have taken over the education. You are providing the bulk of that nutrition therapy. So again, you want to provide this page to your preceptors so that they can complete your evaluations. At the end of appendices A, B, C, and D, you will find the food service, community, clinical, and long-term care evaluation forms. The midterm form and the final form is the same, with the exception that it's called the midterm or it's called the final. So this is an example of the food service rotation final evaluation. So again, you will fill out this top space with your name, what site you're at, who the preceptor is, their phone number, and the dates of which your rotation takes place. The front page is the same for food service, community, clinical, and long-term care. So they all cover CRDNs 1.6, 2.2, 2.3, 2.7, 2.8, 2.10, and 4.4. So you may have noticed that we repeated those bolded competencies in all of the curriculums because this front page is the same for each one. So for this front page, you don't have to fill in any experiences. You simply will provide this to your preceptor and they will determine if you meet expectations, if you're showing improvements, or if you are not meeting expectations, and then there's an area for them to provide comments. So you do not need to fill this out on your experiences only portion of the midterm or the final. For your self-evaluation at midterm, you do want to mark where you feel you fall in achieving these competencies. The remainder of the evaluation is using the quartiles that I just explained. So for CRDN 1.1, this is where you fill out that experiences portion. For every single competency, fill in every experience that may have related to that competency. And then you will send that version of the evaluation form to your preceptor at the midterm and at the final. And then additionally at the midterm, you'll fill in what quartile you feel you have achieved for that competency and any additional comments you want your preceptor to be able to read when they're completing that evaluation. So again, this self-evaluation you will only do at the midterm of each rotation site. After completing all of the experiences, doing your self-evaluation, you'll come down here to this general narrative, and at whatever point of the rotation you are in, complete your strengths, what areas you feel you could improve, final grade recommendations, or if it is the copy that your preceptor is going to be filling out, that experiences only copy, you will leave all of this blank. I know that this was a lot of information to absorb in 20 minutes, but I would highly encourage you to go back and review this page. This is page 32. It clearly outlines each step of the evaluation process. And my other recommendation is that as you are completing those logs, so again, we've got an example here. So start your evaluation forms at the very beginning of your rotation, and as you complete your logs, you can also put these activities into the appropriate competency on your evaluation form. So then when it comes time to do that evaluation, your experiences portion is already complete. You just have to do your self-evaluation if it is a midterm for those rotations lasting longer than 4 weeks, and get those to your preceptor 2 days before your planned time. The last thing I want to reiterate is the importance of sitting down with your preceptor at the beginning of that rotation and planning a date and a time for the midterm, again, only if it's longer than 4 weeks, and for the final evaluation, so that I can get that on my calendar as soon as possible so that I can video conference into as many of these final evaluations as possible. If you have questions, again, don't hesitate to let us know. I know it's a lot to absorb, go through this video a couple of times, but that concludes the module on weekly logs and evaluations.